Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's EBC. We're actually here at the Charles Pillsbury Mansion in Minneapolis on 22nd Street. It's the home of Blind Inc. That's a school for the blind. They have educational programs throughout the year. And we're here today for that because we're looking at John 9, which is the story in which Jesus heals the blind man and allows him to see. It's a really interesting story with lots of layers. We're just going to focus on a couple today. The first of which is the story starts in kind of a dark place because people ask Jesus, there's a blind man and he's been blind since birth. Who is it that sinned, Jesus? They ask. Did the parents sin or did he sin? And that's what caused him to be blind. Now Jesus assures us it does not work like that. Everyone has a purpose, and Jesus assures that this person's purpose, who was blind and now Jesus is going to make him see, is there because Jesus is helping demonstrate the awesome power of God in this instance. And Jesus does cure him and helps him to then see again. Now, the man goes to the Pharisees, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Pharisees in just a moment. But first, we're going to just focus on the fact that this blind man is a little bit like all of us, right? Because literally, this man couldn't see, but also figuratively, Jesus is helping everyone believe in him. And so we have that same sense about us, where we're looking for our purpose in life, and we don't see it necessarily, but we're asking Jesus to help us. So hold on to that for just a moment. We're going to come back to that. Now we're going to think about the Pharisees and what happens after the blind man shows the Pharisees that he can see. The Bible actually has a little title in this next section that says, the Pharisees investigate. And it's really an interesting aspect because if you think just a couple of weeks ago, one of the Pharisees, Nicodemus, had gone off secretly in the night to actually talk to Jesus, learn from Jesus. And at that time, Nicodemus was certain that Jesus was from heaven, from God. Now, in just a couple of short weeks in these readings, we're seeing the Pharisees as really enemies of Jesus at that point, very suspicious of Jesus, and trying to find ways that Jesus is wrong and the Pharisees are right. And so one of the things that happens is the Pharisees start asking questions, and they come up with a very, very strange theory that maybe this man had always been able to see, and that's how it is he can see now. I just want to picture that for a moment, right? That as we're sitting here at an educational facility for blind people, and we think about a man who had been blind from birth, from ages, maybe now he's about 15 or 20 years old, and the Pharisees come up with the idea that they should maybe talk to the parents because it's possible that this person could always see. Can you imagine what that would be like if you had somebody, for instance, coming to this blind school under their educational programs for maybe 15 or 20 years, and then suddenly somebody's saying like, well, maybe they always could see after all. It's really ridiculous, right? And the Pharisees are grasping at straws for reasons why Jesus might not be who Jesus says he is. Now, when we think about that in our everyday lives, there's a little bit of a parallel there, right? Before we're too critical of the Pharisees. That when we hear Jesus calling us, when we think about our purpose in life, and then sometimes we think of reasons or rationales, maybe not as outrageous as maybe this blind person could always see, but we think of reasons or rationales why it is that maybe we don't need to do what Jesus is asking us to do right now, or we think of an excuse why it shouldn't be something that happens right now. We're sort of in that same spot, and we can catch ourselves in that spot and make sure that what we're actually doing is listening to Jesus, listening to our purpose, and not being in a position where we're coming up with reasons or excuses for what it is Jesus is asking us to do. So as we go about our week this week, as we're listening to what God's purpose is for us this week, try to catch yourself in that moment where maybe you're starting to think of those excuses and set those excuses aside and listen to what Jesus is asking us to do in our everyday lives. Have a great week, everyone.